The envelope arrived on the worst day of Sarah Mitchell's life. It was March 15th, and she'd just been told she had 30 days to vacate the apartment where she'd raised her daughter for the past 8 years. 30 days to pack up the memories, the drawings still taped to the refrigerator, the growth marks penciled on the kitchen doorframe. 30 days before she and 9-year-old Emma would have nowhere to go. The envelope was thick, official-looking, with the return address of Thompson and Associates, her new landlord's property management company. Sarah's hands trembled as she opened it, expecting an eviction notice, a final warning, something to make this nightmare even worse. Hey everyone, before we dive deeper into Sarah's story, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. And if you're enjoying this story, hit that subscribe button. It really helps us keep bringing you these incredible tales. Now back to Sarah. Inside wasn't what she expected at all. It was a lease agreement, not a termination, a renewal, for 10 years, at half her current rent. Sarah read it 3 times, certain there was a mistake. Her landlord, Marcus Thompson, was a man she'd only met twice in 8 years. Both times, he'd been cold, businesslike, his expression unreadable behind expensive sunglasses he never removed. He drove a black Mercedes, wore tailored suits that probably cost more than her monthly salary, and never once smiled. When the building had been sold to his company 6 months ago, Sarah had felt a chill run through her. Men like Marcus Thompson didn't care about single mothers working double shifts at the diner. Men like him only cared about profit margins. She called the number on the letterhead, convinced this was some cruel administrative error. Thompson and Associates. How may I help you? The receptionist's voice was crisp, professional. Hi, I'm Sarah Mitchell from Unit 4B at the Riverside Apartments. I just received a lease renewal, but I think there's been a mistake with the rent amount. One moment, please. Sarah heard clicking keyboards, the sound of her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. Ms. Mitchell, yes, everything is correct with your lease. Your unit has been reassessed, and the new rate reflects current market conditions for that particular apartment. But it's half what I was paying before. The building was just renovated. Everyone else's rent went up. Pause. I can only tell you what's in our system, ma'am. Would you like to proceed with the lease signing? Sarah's mind raced. This had to be a trap, some kind of bait and switch. Can I? Is there any way I could speak with Mr. Thompson directly? Mr. Thompson doesn't typically take tenant calls. But if you'd like to leave a message. No, it's okay. I'll come by the office tomorrow. She hung up and stared at the document in her hands. The signature at the bottom was bold, decisive. Marcus Thompson. The same man who'd walked past her in the lobby 3 weeks ago without a word when she tried to say hello. The same man whose company had sent termination notices to half the building's longtime residents. Why would someone like that help someone like her? The next morning, Sarah put on her best dress, the navy one she saved for parent-teacher conferences, and took the bus to the gleaming glass tower downtown where Thompson and Associates occupied the top 3 floors. The lobby alone was more intimidating than she'd imagined. Marble floors, abstract art that probably cost more than a car, and a security desk manned by someone who looked like he could bench press her Honda Civic. I'm here to see Marcus Thompson, she said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. Do you have an appointment? No, but I'm a tenant, and I need to speak with him about my lease. The security guard made a call, spoke in low tones, then shook his head. Mr. Thompson isn't available for walk-ins. You'll need to schedule through the main office. Sarah had expected this. Please, just tell him Sarah Mitchell from Riverside Apartments needs 5 minutes. I'll wait all day if I have to. The guard sighed, made another call. This time, Sarah watched his expression shift from annoyed to surprised. Someone will be down to escort you up. 2 minutes later, Sarah found herself in an elevator ascending to the 23rd floor, following a young woman in a pantsuit who moved with the efficiency of someone who didn't have time for questions. The office was exactly what she'd imagined. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, minimalist furniture, and Marcus Thompson behind a desk that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of dark wood. He stood when she entered, and for the first time, She saw him without the sunglasses. Her breath caught. His eyes were a striking blue, but it wasn't their color that made her freeze. It was the scarring on the left side of his face, a network of healed burns that extended from his temple down to his jaw. The kind of scarring that told a story of pain, of survival, of a moment that had changed everything. "Ms. Mitchell," he said, his voice as measured as she remembered. "Please sit down." Sarah sat, suddenly feeling guilty for having forced this meeting. "I'm sorry to barge in like this. I received the lease renewal, and I don't understand." "What don't you understand?" "Why you'd cut my rent in half. Why you'd give me a 10-year lease when you're trying to turn that building into luxury apartments. Why you'd help me at all when you don't even know me." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his gaze drifting to the window. When he spoke, his voice was softer than before. "I know more than you think, Ms. Mitchell. I know you work 2 jobs, one at Jerry's Diner on 5th Street, the other doing data entry from home on weekends. I know your daughter Emma is in 4th grade at Washington Elementary, where she's on the honor roll. I know you were widowed 4 years ago when your husband died in a construction accident. And I know that 6 months ago, you took out a title loan on your car to pay for your daughter's emergency appendectomy because your insurance had a $5,000 deductible you couldn't afford." Sarah felt her face flush. Have you been investigating me?" I review the files of every tenant in every building I acquire," Marcus interrupted. "Not to invade privacy, but to understand who I'm serving. Real estate isn't just about properties, Ms. Mitchell. It's about people's lives. But that doesn't explain why you'd help me. You could make so much more money if you—" "Can I tell you a story?" Marcus asked, cutting her off again. Sarah nodded, too confused to do anything else. Marcus leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled. 32 years ago, I was 7 years old, living with my mother in a rent-controlled apartment in Brooklyn. My father had left when I was 3. My mother worked as a nurse, pulling double shifts, just scraping by. Then our building was sold to a developer who wanted to gut-renovate it and flip it for luxury condos. He paused, his jaw tightening. We were given 60 days' notice. My mother tried everything. She looked for other apartments, but nothing was affordable. She applied for assistance programs, but there were waiting lists. She even wrote letters to the developer, begging for an extension, offering to pay more rent. Nothing worked. On day 59, she took me to a shelter because she had nowhere else to go. Sarah felt her throat tighten. We lived in that shelter for 7 months. My mother never stopped working, never stopped fighting to get us out. But something broke in her during that time. I watched her light dim. She'd come back from 16-hour shifts at the hospital and just sit on her cot, staring at nothing. Marcus's voice had dropped to barely above a whisper. Then one day a man came to the shelter. His name was Robertson. He owned a small apartment building in Queens, and he'd heard about my mother from someone at the hospital. He offered her an apartment at a rent she could afford, with a lease that gave us stability. He didn't have to do that. We were nothing to him, just another struggling family among thousands. Marcus met Sarah's eyes. But he did it anyway, and that decision changed our lives. My mother got her spark back. I went to a good school. I went to college on scholarships and worked my way through business school. When Mr. Chun died 15 years ago, I went to his funeral. His family told me he'd done that same thing, helping struggling families find stable housing. Dozens of times over the years. He never talked about it. It wasn't for recognition. It was just who he was. Sarah felt tears beginning to form. I started this company with one goal. To build wealth, yes, but to do it in a way that honored Robert Chen's example. I buy buildings, I renovate them, I make them profitable. But in every building, there are families like yours, families who are doing everything right, working themselves to exhaustion, and still one crisis away from losing everything. Those families get protection. They get stability. They get a chance. But why me specifically? Sarah asked, her voice breaking. There are other families in that building. You remind me of my mother, Marcus said simply. Not just your circumstances, but your determination. I've seen you, Ms. Mitchell, more than you think. I've seen you carrying groceries up 4 flights of stairs because the elevator was broken. I've seen you helping Mrs. Chun from 2A with her walker. I've seen you sitting in the lobby at midnight, working on your laptop after your daughter went to sleep because you needed to finish a project. You're doing exactly what my mother did, sacrificing everything for your child, never complaining, never giving up. He leaned forward. The lease isn't charity. Your apartment needs work. The plumbing is old, the windows leak. I'm reducing your rent to reflect that. But I'm also giving you stability because I can, and because someone once gave it to me when I needed it most. Sarah couldn't stop the tears now. I thought you were heartless. I thought you didn't see people like me at all. A sad smile crossed Marcus's face. I wear sunglasses because people stare at the scars. I keep conversations brief because I'm not good at small talk after years of avoiding it. I drive a nice car and wear expensive suits because they're armor. They make people think twice before underestimating me. But those things aren't who I am. They're just how I protect myself. He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a folder. There's something else. I've been setting aside funds for a scholarship program. Full rides to community college for children of working families in buildings I own. Emma would be eligible when she graduates high school. If she maintains her grades and wants to pursue higher education, she'll have that opportunity. Sarah's hands shook as she took the folder. Inside were program details, eligibility requirements, and a list of other children who'd already been selected. 12 names. 12 families getting a chance. I don't know what to say, Sarah whispered. Say you'll sign the lease. Say you'll keep being the amazing mother you are. And maybe, someday, when you're in a position to help someone else, you'll pay it forward. Sarah stood, walked around the desk, and did something that surprised them both. She hugged him. Marcus stiffened at first, clearly uncomfortable, but then slowly relaxed. Thank you, Sarah said. Thank you for seeing me, for seeing all of us. 3 months later, Sarah was closing up at the diner when she saw Marcus Thompson walk in. He'd never been there before, and for a moment, she froze, worried something was wrong. Mr. Thompson? Is everything okay? Marcus, please, he said. And this time he was smiling. And yes, everything's fine. I was in the neighborhood and realized I'd never tried Jerry's famous apple pie that Emma talks about. Sarah laughed. Emma talks to you? She caught me in the elevator last week. Very determined young lady. Wanted to know why I looked so serious all the time. His smile widened. She's a lot like her mother. Sarah poured him coffee and brought him a slice of pie. On the house. Only if you join me, Marcus said. Your shift's over, right? They talked for an hour, about their lives, their struggles, their hopes. Sarah learned that Marcus still lived simply despite his wealth, that he volunteered teaching financial literacy at the same shelter where he'd once lived, that he'd never forgotten where he came from. You know, Sarah said as they were leaving, when I first met you, I thought you were the kind of person who'd never understand what it's like to be afraid, to be one paycheck away from disaster. Marcus paused at the door, looking back at the warm lights of the diner. I'm afraid every day, Sarah. Afraid I won't do enough. Afraid I'll forget what it felt like to have nothing. Afraid I'll become the kind of person who values profit over people. He met her eyes. That fear is what keeps me honest. 2 years later, Sarah stood in the lobby of Riverside Apartments, now fully renovated but still affordable, still home to the families who'd been there for years. She was pinning a flyer to the community board, advertising her new tutoring program for kids in the building. Between her steady job at the diner, her reduced rent, and the savings she'd been able to build, she finally had enough breathing room to give back. Emma ran up, excited about her middle school science fair project. Mom, Mr. Marcus said he'd help me with my presentation. He's bringing materials tomorrow. Sarah watched through the lobby window as Marcus pulled up in his black Mercedes. He'd become a regular presence in the building, not as a landlord, but as a neighbor. He fixed Mrs. Chen's leaky faucet. He organized a summer barbecue for residents. He showed up to kids' birthday parties and school events, always quietly, never seeking attention. The residents who'd once feared him now knew the truth. Marcus Thompson wasn't heartless. He just protected his heart so well that people mistook the armor for the man. As Marcus walked in, carrying a poster board and markers for Emma's project, Sarah felt a wave of gratitude, so profound it almost hurt. Not just for the lease, not just for the scholarship program, but for the reminder that sometimes the people we judge most harshly are fighting battles we know nothing about. "Thank you," she said as he passed. Marcus paused, that small smile she'd come to recognize playing at his lips. "For what?" "For doing the unthinkable," Sarah said. "For being kind when the world told you to be ruthless. For proving that success and compassion aren't opposites." Marcus looked around the lobby, at the children playing, at the neighbors chatting, at the community thriving. "Robert Chun once told my mother that wealth isn't measured in what you have, but in what you give. I'm just trying to live up to that." As he headed upstairs with Emma chattering excitedly about her project, Sarah returned to her flyer. At the bottom, she'd added a quote, one that had been written in the scholarship folder Marcus had given her 2 years ago. "We rise by lifting others. We succeed by helping others succeed. We build wealth by building community." She'd thought Marcus Thompson was heartless. She'd been wrong about so many things. But she'd been right about one. What he'd done was unthinkable. Because in a world that told him to maximize profits, evict tenants, and chase the highest dollar, Marcus Thompson had chosen something radical. He'd chosen kindness. He'd chosen community. He'd chosen to break the cycle instead of perpetuating it. And in doing so, he changed not just Sarah's life, but dozens of others. The ripple effects of Robert Chen's kindness passed through Marcus, now flowing through Sarah and spreading outward. That night, as Sarah tucked Emma into bed in their safe, affordable apartment, the home they no longer had to fear losing, Emma asked a question. "Mom, when I grow up, can I be like Mr. Marcus?" Sarah kissed her daughter's forehead. "Baby, you can be whoever you want to be. But if you choose to be like Marcus, you'll be choosing something beautiful. You'll be choosing to see people who feel invisible. You'll be choosing to help when it's easier to walk away. You'll be choosing to be brave in a way that really matters." "I want to be brave like that," Emma whispered. "Then you will be," Sarah promised. Outside, the city lights twinkled. Somewhere in a high-rise office, Marcus Thompson was probably still working, still planning, still figuring out how to make the numbers work so that one more family could have stability, so that one more child could have opportunities. People who didn't know him would still see the expensive car, the tailored suits, the serious expression. They'd make assumptions. They'd judge. But the people who truly knew Marcus Thompson, the families whose lives he'd changed, the children whose futures he'd secured, the communities he'd built, they knew the truth. Sometimes the people who seem the most heartless are actually the ones who feel the most deeply. They've just learned to protect their hearts while still keeping them open enough to care. And that's not heartless at all. That's the bravest kind of heart there is. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe and share it with someone who needs a reminder that kindness still exists in the world. Let me know in the comments what you thought. Did Marcus's story surprise you? Have you ever misjudged someone only to discover their hidden depths?